think there's a lot here that could be useful in the Blind Coders Blazing Trail project, because I do think that what sighted people and what blind people need are different from one another. And sometimes what has been created for sighted people to make it easier for them, then uh, the blind people have to like compensate or find a way to interpret that same thing in a way that's usable to them. And I think that it would be good to think about what are the kinds of adaptations that are useful to blind people, not just sort of changing what the sighted people are doing into a different format, but like, is there something totally different that would be more useful? And also just recognizing the different abilities that it takes for people, and thinking about how to build something that helps reduce the chance of errors, because I think that's, I was getting so discouraged because I was making all these errors, and it's like, is it because I'm dumb, or is it because I can't use the same tools that other people are using? And it may have been some of both. I mean, I don't know, maybe I would go down the line and be like, oh, I'm no good at this coding, it's really not something I can ever do very well. But I didn't really get far enough to find that out. And then the last thing I wanted to say was about the memory. I think that there's a lot of things that blind people do in our everyday lives that transfers over to other types of learning or situations, because when we were talking about the short-term memory, I was thinking about the fact that most blind people I know rely just a lot on their memory for very ordinary things, like I need to remember where I put my coffee cup down, because I can't just sort of look around. I mean, I can, feel around and find something, but it will take longer. And so it's a lot more efficient if I just keep track of it. Whereas some people have they don't keep that in their mind at all, who can see, they just use their eyes to find the thing the next time they need it. So I think there are things that we do already that could help when learning more technical skills.
So is it fair to say that many blind people are orderly in terms of the placement of physical things?
Well, I think some are not. Some are not, but it I would say more so than not. I don't know what Palios thinks about that.
You may not know this, but programmers can be quite orderly, obsessive perhaps, about how their code is set out. For example, in Python, there's a program called Black, which is named after Henry Ford's statement about the Model T Ford. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. It will take the Python source code and format it in a very standard way. And some projects insist that the source code go through Black before it's checked in. In the C programming languages, there's lots of standards, and there's a standard tool that converts programs written in one layout standard to another layout standard. And these are sort of sighted person's adaptations. And to a certain extent, what I'm saying is that blind people or people with visual impairments also need adaptations to be developed.
Yes.
To help them with the work. And because they're quite a small minority and, so to speak, perhaps a little bit isolated, these things tend not to happen except in the context of things like NVDA. I think I should give Phil and Erdel and Nelson chances to say things.
Okay. Just for the video record, I want to put up a picture of this book on the Mythical Man Month I'm holding in my hands. I just checked the inside. It was the 20th anniversary edition, appeared in 1995. It's published by Addison Wesley, the same company that publishes Don Knuth's The Art of Computer Programming and Computers and Typesetting books. And I also wanted to mention an important lesson from this book that isn't obvious to the average human. Most people think that if you have a tough job, what you need is more person power, more people power. And what they in fact learned on this very difficult project to build an operating system that was going to be long-lived and work on a variety of implementations of the hardware was that that doesn't work. You have to put fewer people on the job, because when you put more people on, they spend more time communicating and more time getting confused and just making a royal hash of things. So it's really important on projects of this type that there be a small team of experts and let them get on with the job, and then they'll get it done. That's one of the reasons why small companies sometimes can get a technological leap over large companies. And even though IBM was the company where Fred Brooks wrote this book about, IBM and Microsoft and Apple have all been beaten by much smaller companies getting off the ground, Google being a current example. It started with 2 students at Stanford University and turned into one of the world's largest companies.
I was just going to, if I could just speak quickly, I was just going to add my point, which is I think that accessibility really means accessibility for everyone, in that typically stuff that's accessible to blind or deaf or whatever is generally good design for anyone, so that typically lots of the things that we develop will be of use elsewhere. So things like simplicity of program layout, of ease of reading material is generally good for all readers, not just one segment. And I think that is something I think people don't really quite understand. That's why I asked about the layout, because layout is, I think, important, but how you communicate the layout to something other than the compiler is quite tricky. I mean, Paulus mentioned the tab. He mentioned the word tab, and I regard, for example, the tab character as intrinsically evil, because, of course, you can't really tell what a tab character means. I mean, unless you've got access to the original program, and that's so there's all sorts of issues around that which are conveyed, meaning is conveyed, but carrying that across. So, for example, in the Haskell language, function application is denoted by juxtaposition. You don't have to have parentheses around the arguments, and there are good mathematical reasons for doing that. But you try and explain that to conventional programmers, and they'll regard you as being a bit odd. So there's lots of cultural aspects that are pervasive throughout programming and word processing and tech that need to be addressed for everyone, not just for unsighted. Okay, back to you, Jonathan.